to start this episode with a story because I was asked a question and I didn't know what other way to really answer it, but here it goes. Christian Cueva, a couple of years ago when he was signed by Sao Paulo, was over the moon. He was thrilled. He was absolutely, he understood that this was a moment where his career had changed. He was already with the Peruvian national team, but his performances really helped him make that jump from Peru to Brazilian football. He's had moments there and he's been able to do things. But in that process, from the moment he signs to the time he joins Sao Paulo, here's the problem. He started to celebrate. And he started to celebrate a little bit more. And he started celebrating a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And then a couple hours became a day, and a day became 2 days, and 2 days became 3 days, and so on and so forth. Until one day, he's finally told by one of his teammates, "What are you still doing here?" And he was puzzled. He goes and says, "Well, I'm celebrating. I'm not supposed to be there yet. So big deal. I'll take a few days, relax, and go." He's like, "No, go now, because you need to mentally get yourself ready for what's coming." That player that goes and tells him that is none other than Paolo Guerrero. And now, for you to understand it and have a little bit more context in terms of why this was said and the consequences of this being said, is that I for one have always been a defender of Peruvian football players. To me, not just now, this has been about for 10, 15, 20 years now, I've always been saying if there's a player, a prototypical player that has been able to match the skill, the flair, and the ability of the Brazilians and the Argentines, it's the Peruvian player. They have that DNA, they have that history, they have that style, they have that identity of football that likes the flair, that likes the quick touches, that likes to really give a little bit more spice to their football. But their biggest downfall is how they view the game outside. Peru has always had skillful players, they've always had quality players, but they were never able to really become a team. They were never able to become professional footballers in the sense of not being professional, but having a more professional attitude. A lot of times they were celebrating when a lot of the foreign-based players would come to the national team call-ups. They'd have parties before their World Cup qualifying matches. So much so there was a huge scandal a few years ago. One of them involved Jefferson Farfan, where they were bringing in women and they were bringing in people to party with at the hotel where the national team was staying prior to a match. I forget who it was. I think it was Brazil or Argentina, but they were partying the night before. That was one of the reasons why Jefferson Farfan was kind of resisted at first by Ricardo Gareca until they had that conversation and he was able to finally come in. And he was able to repay that loyalty and that trust in the latter stages of World Cup qualifying play. Cueva, going back to my original story, comes to Paolo Guerrero and says thank you, because he now understood why Guerrero told him that. All the results, all the fruit that they're bearing right now is a result of that type of leadership that has emerged through a player that really seemed a bit of a troublemaker at first, that really was a player that seemed to not find his way at times. But as he matured, he understood the gravity. He also understood, I guess, for lack of a better term, he understood the importance of the moment and what Peru was striving towards. And him and his leadership helped some of those players straighten out and understand the focus of the situation. So much so that when they returned from the national team, a lot of the players in Peru, when they returned the other day from their match against Iceland, they were received as heroes. It was just a friendly match. Actually, it was two if you include the match against Croatia. But the fervor and the passion and the excitement that this team has been able to generate is unrivaled. It seemed like they had won the World Cup, but it really wasn't. It was just a token of appreciation for what this team has been able to do, overcoming over 36 years of heartbreak. A generation lost out at sea. a lot of disappointments, a lot of times coming short, a lot of infighting, a lot of battling here and there, until this group of players was able to finally get it and understand that it's not what happens on the pitch. That's very important. But it was what happened off of it. Getting their mindset straight, getting their understanding of what they need to do in order to make an objective possible. No longer was the national team a place where players were going to go to be seen in order to be signed by a European team or a big South American club. It was where the World Cup was going to be, and they were going to make something special out of this. Mind you, I've dealt with a lot of people from Peru. I've dealt with people that have played on the national team over at Peru, and they've told me how much of a different team this is, how much more professional. I'm talking about in the responsibility sense, in the accountability sense, compared to teams that were pretty much donning that uniform years before that. They understand now what they're representing. They know that there's a higher calling than just scoring goals and winning games and having a good time. It's about a legacy that they're building, so then the program grows and the football grows and their country grows and a lot of other things can grow. That is not built on the pitch. That's built off. And one of the players that helped gel that Peruvian team was Paolo Guerrero. And that's the best answer I can give, because sometimes you see his numbers and they're not the most outstanding. They're not the most awe-inspiring. They're not the most overwhelming and gaudy. But you have to look at something else. You have to look at his presence and what he's been able to offer this team. And that's where your best answer can come. That's where you start to see it. The statistics won't tell you the entire story of Paolo Guerrero. But his experience on how he dealt with Christian Cueva is probably going to tell you volumes.